When my grandmother died, she left me her house and one sentence in her will that stood apart from the rest. The handwriting there was shakier, darker, pressed deep into the paper as if she'd been gripping the pen too hard. It read, "Do not open the attic." It struck me as strange but not alarming. People have odd rules. She was old. Maybe she had valuables up there, or maybe she'd blocked it off years ago because it was unsafe. Whatever the reason, it was easy to follow. I didn't care about an attic. The house stood alone at the edge of a small Pennsylvania town, 3 stories high, its steep gables like jagged teeth against the sky. The paint had faded to a soft, tired gray, and the shutters clung stubbornly to the windows as if afraid to fall. The first time I stepped inside, I felt a hush that wasn't quite peace. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something older, like books in a basement box. The floors gave quiet sighs under my weight, and each room seemed to watch me settle in. The attic door was on the 2nd floor, just past my bedroom. It was narrow, painted the same off-white as the walls, with a tarnished brass knob and a thick, rust-spotted padlock. I glanced at it a few times that first week, mostly when passing it on my way to the bathroom, but never lingered. The warning from her will echoed faintly each time, and I'd keep walking. The first week was uneventful. I worked from the dining room table, unpacked slowly, and learned the way the house groaned in the wind. I slept with the windows cracked for fresh air. The nights were long but quiet. Until the 9th night. I woke in darkness to a sound above me. Faint at first, almost imagined. A slow, deliberate scratching. I held my breath, listening. It faded after a few seconds, and I told myself it was just the wood settling or a mouse in the insulation. The next night it returned. Louder. The scratching moved from one side of the ceiling to the other, slow and deliberate, then paused as though waiting for me to react. I lay still in bed, watching the shadows sway on my ceiling. By the 3rd night, the scratching was joined by something else. A soft, irregular thump. Not heavy enough to be footsteps. Not light enough to be a small animal. There was a strange wetness to it, as if something was hitting the wood with a damp cloth. I told myself I was imagining it, but the sounds came again the following afternoon while I was making coffee. They moved overhead, directly above the kitchen, a dragging noise that made me set my mug down and glance toward the ceiling. That night I called my friend Mason. "It's probably raccoons," he said after listening to me describe it. "Or squirrels. You need an exterminator." The exterminator came 2 days later. He was an older man with a worn baseball cap and a tool bag. I led him upstairs, pointed to the attic door. He frowned at the padlock. "You don't have a key." "No. It's been locked for years. My grandmother didn't want anyone up there." I shrugged. "Can't do much unless I can get inside. You'll have to open it first." That night the sounds changed. I woke to a faint rhythm, not scratching now but something like breathing. Slow inhales and exhales, almost human. It was that detail that broke me. I couldn't sleep knowing there was something alive above me. The next morning I drove into town and bought a pair of bolt cutters. I stood in front of the attic door for a long time before using them. My palms were slick with sweat. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but my grandmother's warning pressed against my thoughts. Finally, I slid the jaws of the cutters over the lock's shank and squeezed. It snapped with a sound that seemed too loud for the quiet hallway. The padlock fell away, and a wave of air rolled out from behind the door, hot, dense, and foul. It smelled of burnt hair and something faintly metallic. The stairs behind the door were narrow, steep, coated in dust. I climbed slowly, flashlight in hand. The beam cut through the dimness, catching floating dust motes that spun like tiny insects. The smell grew stronger with each step. The attic was bigger than I expected. The ceiling peaked high overhead, the space filled with the shapes of old trunks, stacks of newspapers, and a single wooden rocking chair that swayed once, as though disturbed by my arrival. In the center of the floor was a pile of gray ash. Froze. The ash was mounded like someone had swept it together, and as I approached, I saw a faint heat shimmer above it. I crouched and reached out, but hesitated before touching it. The ash was strange, clumped in places, almost fibrous, with darker streaks running through it. Then it moved. The mound shifted, sinking slightly, as though something beneath it had stirred. A faint sound came from it, a soft, papery tearing. Something thin and black pushed through the ash. It was no thicker than a twig, but smooth, jointed wrong, with too many bends. It glistened faintly in the light. The surface cracked like burned wood, and where it cracked, something damp and red pulsed beneath. I stumbled back, my flashlight beam jittering over the mound. Another black limb slid free, and another. The air grew hotter. The smell of burnt hair thickened until it clawed at the back of my throat. Then came a sound, a thin, high whine, almost like steam escaping a kettle, but layered with something almost human, as if it were trying to form words. I didn't wait to hear more. I backed toward the stairs, then turned and nearly fell down them. I slammed the attic door shut and shoved the broken padlock through the latch. That night there were no sounds from above. But the air in the house felt different, heavy, charged, as if a storm had slipped inside and was hiding somewhere in the walls. The next morning, the chair I'd braced under the attic door was gone, not knocked over or moved. That night, I dreamed of my grandmother. She sat at the kitchen table, her pale hands folded, her eyes too bright for her tired face. "You opened it," she said. I tried to explain, but my voice came out hollow like it was underwater. "You can't put it back now," she whispered, and when she unfolded her hands, they were blackened and cracked, the skin splitting to reveal the same red dampness I'd seen under the attic limbs. The table beneath them began to smolder. I woke choking on the smell of burnt hair. Days passed. The noises returned. Louder, bolder, sometimes in daylight. I told Mason everything. He came over one evening with beer and the kind of calm he wore like armor. "Let's take a look," he said. I didn't want to, but some part of me needed to know. We opened the attic door together. The heat rolled over us like breath. The ash pile was gone. In its place, something had been drawn on the floor. A perfect circle of smeared gray dust, with 4 lines cutting inward like compass points. At the center sat the missing chair, blackened and sunk slightly into the boards as though the wood had softened under it. The air inside the circle shimmered, bending the light. Beneath that shimmer, the floor seemed to pulse. The whisper came again. Louder. Clearer. "Warmth, stay with us." Mason stepped toward it before I grabbed his arm. The moment he moved closer, the floor inside the circle cracked open. Beneath wasn't darkness. It was swirling ash, glowing faintly, and inside it, shapes moved. They bent in ways bodies shouldn't, and though I couldn't see their faces, I felt them looking at us. One reached upward. Its arm slid out of the glowing ash like something breaking the surface of water, stretching impossibly far until it wrapped around Mason's ankle. He screamed, the sound raw and high. The limb tightened, pulling him toward the circle. I grabbed him, my hands burning where they touched his skin, the heat radiating from him as if the thing was setting him alight from the inside. The whispers shifted, speaking only to him now. "Stay, you're warm." We missed the warm. For a moment, his muscles loosened. His eyes glassy, like he was about to give in. I shouted his name and he jerked back to life, kicking hard. The grip broke, the limb snapping back into the ash below. We stumbled toward the stairs as the whispers turned to shrieks. The boards inside the circle glowed like embers. The heat became unbearable. We made it to the hallway, but above us, footsteps began. Slow, deliberate, matching our pace. The ceiling creaked under the weight. Halfway down the stairs, the footsteps stopped. Then my grandmother's voice came, clear and cold. "You open the way." We ran into the rain, the front door swinging open behind us like the house was daring us to return. We drove to a motel 2 towns over. I told Mason we'd go back in daylight, grab essentials, and leave for good. But just before dawn, I woke to a smell in the room, faint but familiar. Burnt hair. The window was open. On the sill sat a small, perfect pile of gray ash, still warm. And from somewhere inside it came the faintest sound, a slow inhale. And then, softly, almost lovingly,